I'm Howard Barouxis, and I am a partner with Valenta based in Miami, Florida.
And my name is Jake Day. I'm a managing partner with Valenta, and I'm based in Arkansas and also cover the Georgia market as well.
Welcome to our podcast titled 2.0 Weekly. In today's podcast, we're going to talk about some updates in terms of what happened in the world of digital transformation this week. And we'll also talk a little bit about some updates on what happened in Valenta this week. Sound like a good agenda, Jake?
Yeah, it sounds great. I'll get us started.
All right, perfect.
All right. Yeah, going through some of our technology partners this week, I found some pretty interesting articles. A couple from UiPath in particular, one covering one of my favorite topics. The name of the article is called Unlocking the Benefits of Citizen Developer Automation Programs. This is something that I'm becoming more and more passionate about, because what this does is it gives the ability to put automation tools directly into the hands of people who do the work and who know what needs to be automated. A lot of times these are going to be automations that might be a lower priority for IT departments, but it's a big priority for people who are actually doing the work, sometimes business units actually in the organization. And so this article really talks about how everyone in an organization can be a part of that automation journey through these business-sponsored citizen developer programs. Just to define what a citizen developer is, it's a non-technical employee equipped with the skills to create simple automations. That's how the article defines it. Citizen developer programs, what they do is, like I said, they get automation into the hands of a wide user base who typically know what the problems are and can tackle what the article calls the long tail of potential automation benefits within the organization. Just like in marketing, where they talk about the long tail and how much value is sometimes trapped in the long tail, that same concept is applied to automation. And so they have a really good case study as well from the U.S. Air Force, who actually uses a citizen developer program. Talks about in the case study that about 20% of the tasks that were originally a part of their human workload through their citizen automation, citizen developer program, is now being covered by bots. So it's a really good article. Definitely check it out. Another article that I found, how automation enables companies to meet sustainability objectives. Sustainability is a big topic of conversation in companies and organizations. So this article talks about how automation helps organizations really do three things: achieve their environmental, social, and governance objectives. It's also going to speed up green initiatives, which is becoming more important. And also it talks about how automation reduces a company's carbon footprint, which I found really interesting. And so I think our listeners will definitely want to check that out. Hopstack, my friends at Hopstack had a really good article this week as well, called Hopstack's Multi-Warehouse Management Module. A lot of our clients have multiple warehouses, and there's a lot of complexity that comes into managing multiple warehouses and such. So this article is all about how Hopstack solves for the lack of visibility into multiple warehouse locations and automates order routing, inventory allocation, multi-level analytics, a whole lot more. So definitely, your organization has multiple warehouses. Absolutely check that out. One of my favorite articles from the Hopstack team this week was they have a complete guide to managing an automated warehouse. So if you're maybe new, if you're listening to this podcast and maybe you're kind of new to the concept of the automated warehouse, it's a very good, thorough article that can get anyone up to speed very quickly on what this whole concept of the automated warehouse is about. It talks about what is warehouse automation, types of warehouse automation, and also the different automation technologies that are specific to warehouses, specific problems that automation can solve in the warehouse, how to implement and automate, how to implement what they call an automated warehouse model, which I found was pretty innovative, and also some of the challenges, best practices, and then also benefits of adopting this model. And then the last group I want to highlight, our friends over at Conversight.ai. They had a good article on the top 3 advances in digital transformation supply chain that you need to know in 2022. And what it's going to talk about is this concept of developing a supply chain control tower, which is it's a good way to manage your warehouse from kind of a holistic perspective. Kind of think of it as air traffic control, except for warehouse. They also talk about how you can incorporate conversational AI into your supply chain processes. And then the last piece that it touches on in this article is centralizing data for improved decision making. What's interesting is they're using bots when we talk about centralized data, we're not just talking about internal data. That's what a lot of organizations do. They want to consolidate all their internal data for decision making. You definitely want to do that, but it becomes very powerful when you can also have bots that are going to external resources where appropriate, pulling in that data in an automated, oftentimes real-time fashion, so that even better decisions can be made by the management team. So another great article. We'll have the links to all those in the show notes. But yeah, those are a few of the articles I found. Howard, what'd you find this week?
Oh, I found a bunch. Those were good ones. So thanks for bringing those up. I found some stuff from a few different vendors. So I had a few interesting things from Smartsheets, Zoho, Yellow.ai, and also Tableau, which of course is now part of Salesforce. For Smartsheets, they recently announced that they've got a module for integration between Smartsheets and SharePoint. And that goes way beyond, just linking, files or articles or stuff like that or action items. But it was a much tighter integration. And reading about that made me really realize that the Smartsheet storage is what Teams uses and is really like shared storage, and the OneDrive is really for your own personal storage. But it was a good article. I'm not doing it justice here, but that integration was great. For Zoho, I found 2 things that I thought were interesting this past week. Zoho was also recently named to a Gartner Magic Quadrant, and that was for analytics and BI. And they were named in the Gartner's Magic Quadrant along with companies like Tableau from Salesforce, Oracle, Tibco, SAP, MicroStrategy, and AWS. But they were really the only company in the quadrants that is really focused on SMBs mostly. I mean, Zoho does have some large enterprise customers, but they have a ton of SMB clients like us. So I thought it was very interesting that they were on that chart with that focus that they have that's very similar to us. They also had a very good, nice article about marketing automation, and it really touched upon personalizing communication based on where people are in a sales funnel. They talked about omni-channel marketing. They also talked about life cycle marketing. They talked about AI-enabled chatbots, and they talked about retargeting without tracking using cookies and stuff like that, which is a real challenge for marketers these days. And then finally, talked a bit about mobile optimized content. From Yellow.ai, they had 2 really interesting articles, and it was about 2 segments that, one was obvious to me and one maybe wasn't, that would be a good user for conversational AI from vendors like Yellow.ai. The first one that wasn't obvious to me was educational institutions. And they spent quite a bit of time talking about how intelligent chatbots and conversational AI could be used in an educational environment, and really talked about virtual tutoring, student engagement, student support, basically a chatbot, a smart chatbot enabled with conversational AI being a teacher's assistant or an administrative assistant, and then also doing feedback collection, which you might anticipate as well. But I'd really not thought about conversational AI in that sector before it, but it made a lot of sense after reading the article, especially after the pandemic that we've been through. I'm sure it drove a lot of innovation. The other thing that they talked about, and another article that they wrote that caught my eye, and it is more of an obvious use of conversational AI, was for the insurance industry, but it was a very good kind of run through of how the insurance industry could use conversational AI. And they talked about customer engagement, talked about claims processing, talked about payment collection as well, talked about lead generation, cross-selling and upselling of existing clients using chatbots, and basic customer support. But it was really super well laid out and very interesting. And I would encourage everybody to go back and check that out, especially if you're in that industry. And then the final one that caught my eye this week was something from Tableau. And they published a really interesting article about how to use Tableau for mapping and geographical analysis. And I'd never really given much thought to this, but this article was a pretty good primer on how Tableau addresses that. It also had a lot of links to other articles that Tableau has published about geographic mapping and that type of thing. And I come from a space, the telco space, multi-channel service operators, cable providers, stuff like that, where it was always very interesting to look at things, look at performance based on a geographic area. So, this was very interesting to me. And I actually had some customers actually in the Atlanta area where you are, Jake, that were super interested in using Tableau as operators. So those were some of the things that caught my eye. But yeah, it was a big week, and those are just some of the highlights. Jake, could you tell us a little bit about what's going on in your practice lately in terms of what's your Valenta highlights for the week?
Yeah, I've got a lot going on this week. I do have one client helping to do some work on ERP system that they're implementing. And one of the things, as and I've done some research on this as well, not with this client, but with other clients as well. When you talk about ERP systems, I think there's a misconception that when you implement an ERP system, it's going to solve all the problems in your organization, right? A lot of times that's how it's sold, but it doesn't. And there's actually a lot of opportunity for automation to clean up some of those processes on the back end that maybe didn't get automated as a part of the implementation. And so finishing up the implementation actually over the course of the next month or two. But I think there's going to be some opportunity down the road, not just for potentially this client, but for any clients out there who have implemented an ERP system recently, and you're like, well, there's still work to be done. It didn't automate everything. There is maybe we can find some articles on it in some of the coming sessions because there's a lot of opportunity for some of our technology vendors who sometimes they already have kind of out-of-the-box solutions for solving for some of these ERP opportunities that exist kind of post-implementation is what I'd call it. Also finishing up a proof of concept for a company. What they're needing to do is automate the process for how they send documents to customers. It's a very simple process, but this is going to save a lot of time, a lot of effort, and it's going to help their end clients get the documentation that they need faster. And so that's something else I'll be working on. And the final thing, finishing up a proposal for a proof of concept for a company who wants to use bots to streamline their customer complaints process, but also to provide a lot more transparency to customers as to the status of a complaint, where we're at in the resolution process. And as a customer, that's half the battle, right? Is we just want to stay informed about where our complaint is. And as a company that wants to provide the best service, that's a competitive advantage a lot of times over what competition can provide. No company is going to be perfect. You're going to have complaints. The key is to make sure that your customer stays informed and it gets resolved in a timely fashion. And so got a good plan, putting together a good plan to solve for that for one potential client as well. So a lot going on in our space. What about yourself, Howard?
Oh, yeah, I had a pretty interesting week. It was a different week for me, but going back to some of your highlights, I'm sure in the ERP automation, we can go back to our friends at UiPath for that. And then in terms of the automation of the complaints and that type of customer support activity, I really think companies are missing the boat. They need to lean in on these types of things. And it's a real way to make what might be a negative a real positive in terms of being able to respond to that well. It's really a way to turn it around. And most customers understand that everything's not going to go right all the time, but how you handle that really separates you from your competition. So anyways, good stuff. Yeah, so for me, it was a different kind of week. I was out in Las Vegas again last week. I've gone to Vegas twice in April. I think I'm good for, at least the next 6 months now. But I was out at a big trade show called the NAB. It's a National Association of Broadcasters show. Used to attract 90 to 100,000 people for a show. It had like 55,000 people at the show, so it was a good one. And really, there's a lot of vendors that supply the broadcast media company type community, as well as multi-channel service operators that I call on. So it's out there mostly talking about digital marketing for vendors that supply into that space, but that really cool to check out the technology. But I'm actually getting off topic from digital transformation, so that was not the highlight of my week last week, but that was something that I focused on last week. In terms of maybe highlights for Valenta the past week, less for myself because I was really kind of laser focused on this one trade show. I heard a lot about good activity for bots getting implemented and deals getting signed last month from yourself as well as some other managing partners. Definitely saw some new staff augmentations come through and get booked. More accountants and bookkeepers and more assistants that are being customized for specific tasks in different departments. And the virtual assistants that we provide do way more than just a virtual assistant managing a schedule or an email account. And they really can be trained to do things within a specific role or department, like HR, like real estate management, and the possibilities are endless. Also, Valenta had a couple interesting blogs drop last week, 2 interesting articles. One was titled "How to Build an Accounting Bot in 5 Easy Steps," and that was very informative, and that's on the Valenta AI site. And then there was also one on digital marketing, which I thought was super interesting, and it was about SEO, and it even has a joke in it. And the joke goes something like this: "Hey Jake, what's the best place to hide a dead body?"
How did it body? I don't know.
Page 2 of Google results. And that just goes to show you why SEO is so important. And the article was pretty interesting, but SEO is important to every industry. But those were kind of the highlights for me last week, kind of all over the place, like me sometimes. I don't know. That for me is kind of a wrap, Jake. Is there anything else you want to add?
No, it's a good joke. We have to come up with more jokes.
Oh, I have another SEO joke, but you know what? I think I'm going to save it for another episode.
There we
Unless you
go.
want to hear it now. Do you really want to hear it now?
I think we do. Yeah.
Okay,
Let's
so
hear it.
here's another SEO joke. You're really desperate when you're looking on page 2 of Google search results.
There you go.
Anyways, I didn't do that joke very well, but that's my second corny SEO joke. So with that said, this is a conclusion of our 2.0 weekly podcast. We will be back talking at you next week with more highlights from digital transformation and Valenta. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.